At this supremely dangerous moment in human history, the only way of salvation is the ancient Hindu way. Here we have the attitude and spirit that can make it possible for the human race to grow together into a single family. That's by Mark Twain. That's our quote of the day, and this is Access the Podcast. All right, welcome to Access the Podcast. We're thrilled, as we always are, to have a great guest with us. We're going to have Narayana Swamy Sankagiri with us. We're going to call him, for short, we're going to call him Nasy, as we've talked several times off air and come to that understanding so I don't keep messing up the name. This is going to be about Hinduism, and the reason we're doing this is because, again, it fits our mission in trying to find out the answers to all of the great questions in the universe. And one of the things we do, it seems like I do it all the time, is to kind of think, okay, well, that doesn't really count, or this doesn't count because I don't know what it means, or I don't know what it's about. And so I don't want to do that. I've done that way too many times in my life. And so I've committed myself to finding out the things that I don't know by actually learning about what they are, rather than just dismissing them out of hand because they don't fit in with the traditional things that I've known. Our great guest today is Nasy. He was born into a traditional Hindu family in South India. He was raised by science teachers who were also devout Hindus, and he's made his life here in Detroit for the last 30 years or so, or at least lived in Detroit for 30 years. He's a mechanical engineer by trade, but now he's shifted over and doing personal finances. But he's also a major player in the community of Hinduism here in the Detroit area. He is a lay leader in the community, president of the Hindu Community Relations Council, the chair of the outreach at the Bharataya Temple in Troy, and he's often a panelist on interfaith events, adding the Hindu view to the discussion on these interfaith events. And that's what he's going to do here, talk about Hinduism. Very happy to have you with us today, Nasy. Welcome to Access the Podcast.
First of all, Brian, namaste. Thank you so much for having me on the show and wanting to talk about Hinduism. If it's okay with you and your show team, I would like to offer a very short, very brief Hindu prayer.
Please do. Absolutely.
Thank you. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha, Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Salutations to the spiritual masters and salutations to the deity Ganesha, who is the god of auspicious beginnings. Now I will offer a peace hymn from the Taittiriya Upanishad of the Vedas. I'll give you the English first, followed by the original Vedic hymn. Let both of us be protected in this coming together. Let both of us be nurtured. Let both our energies work vigorously in this endeavor so that our knowledge becomes sharpened and glows. And let this coming together, working together, not result in any differences between us. Peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. I find this peace hymn a very suitable wishful prayer in any interactions like this, in mutual discussions, and in classrooms between a teacher and students.
Oh, how awesome. That's great. Thank you so much for providing that, for doing that for us. That's a great way to begin this.
Thank you.
And as the next part, why don't we just jump right into it?
Yes.
Give us, kind of unpack it. What is Hinduism? What is that to somebody who's practicing it? Give us as I like to say, walk us across the bridge on that.
So, because Hinduism is fundamentally different from the religious social landscape that we live in here in America, it takes a little bit of open mind and a little bit of understanding to understand the basics of this religious path. This is how I try to explain it to anybody who is interested, but they themselves are not Hindu. They have not particularly, read or listened to anything about Hinduism. Hinduism is primarily a religion of rishis. Rishi is a Sanskrit word. Sanskrit is the ancient Indian language which is still being widely used now, but most of the theological books and literature is in the Sanskrit language. The word rishi means the one who saw. These are ancient sages who often secluded themselves in, forests and hills and such, and they were immersed in deep meditation. And in that deep state of meditation, they perceived some universal truths. And what they perceived, they spoke out in a poetic form. And that collection of these poetic hymns became the collection called, the books called the Vedas, the 4 major Vedas of Hinduism. So the rishis are at the foundation of what we know as Hinduism. Since we already started talking about books, it is a religion of books. Not one book, not 2 books, literally hundreds and hundreds of books. At the foundation are the 4 Vedas, and at the end of the Vedas, there are these sections called the Upanishads, which primarily deal with philosophical discourse. The end of the Veda is called Vedanta, so this philosophical treatment came to be known as Vedanta. In fact, Dr. Rubinstein talks about this term when you were talking about the pantheistic.
Yeah, Mary Jane Rubinstein.
Yeah, Mary Jane
Rubinstein.
Yes.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Vedanta sort of equates the word philosophy in our regular discourse. There are the Upanishads. Then there are these fanciful poetic storytellings called the Puranas. These are like mega series. This is like sort of Game of Thrones series, goes on and on and on and traces generations of families and godly deeds, godly beings, demonic beings, mega battles, so on and so forth. Mostly these are symbolic and they are embodiment. So this is a religion of books. And thirdly, it's a religion of concepts. It's a religion, particularly 2 very key concepts called dharma and karma. These 2 concepts are at the root of the entire Hindu religious practice. We can elaborate on that a little bit later. Now, we talked about the rishis who are very ancient. We talked about the books, the knowledge that came from the rishis. Now, from those ancient times, how did this knowledge reach us? We had an unbroken chain of teachers all the way from that time to the modern day, contemporary day. So it is a religion of teachers. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. You might have realized the word, I'm repeatedly using the word guru.
Guru, right, that's coming
through.
Guru,
not in the contemporary English language, we use guru as like anybody who's super knowledgeable in a particular field. But guru essentially means a spiritual master who is transmitting this knowledge from ancient times to us.
Okay.
It's a religion of teachers. Last but not the least, it's a religion of sacred places. Specific sacred places are very important to Hindus. Practicing Hindus make it a point to make a pilgrimage to the extent their means allow, their health allows, etc., to these various specific points. You can kind of imagine them as sort of power centers. You go there to recharge your spiritual practice or to elevate your spiritual practice. So this is what is Hinduism in a nutshell. Wow. I'll take one more minute to kind of say what it is not.
Okay, great.
Because, again, the dominant culture, religious culture that is surrounding us here in the American society is a certain way. It's sometimes useful to think of Hinduism in contrast to others. Number one, it does not have a known origin. We just say it is ancient, and we Hindus are happy to accept it is ancient. We don't know when it started. In fact, one phrase we use to describe our religion is Sanatana Dharma, eternal religion. Eternal means it has always been there, and it will always be there. And two, there is no specific founder. There is no known specific origination story, origination person, origination time. What we have are two groups of people, the rishis and the teachers, that build this bridge of dharma from ancient times to current day. So in these two major ways, it is in contrast to the other religious practices that surround us here in the USA. So I hope that provides a sort of a basis, a foundation for us to leap off into further conversation.
It's a fantastic summary. I mean, like, okay, we're pretty much done now. So see ya.
See you. Bye bye.
That was short. No, it was really a great summary. I love that. When I started looking at all these things, this religions and science, philosophy, one of the things I was very dedicated to doing is looking at all the books. Right? You said this is a religion of books, but when I got to I've plowed through the Bible, I went through the Quran, I've done through a lot of the books, but when I hit Hinduism, the Vedic texts were so voluminous that it's like, okay, I'm not doing that. Okay, I'm just not. I'm spending my entire life.
Unfortunately, there is no Cliff's Notes of the Vedas.
No, there's not really a good shortened version of it. So this is an excellent introduction to it, and I very much appreciate it. And you've touched on a couple of the questions I had right out of the gate, which is, how did it originate and when? And there is no originator.
There's no originator.
And there is no when. It just was always there according to the religious tradition. All right. So let's go focus on the main thing, the universal truths. You said that the rishis were meditating and they, had this universal truth. So maybe they were the ones who kind of can be seen as the originators.
Yes.
What were these universal truths? What do they?
Okay,
find?
I'll give you a very quick example.
Okay.
In fact, I'm kind of stealing from your question further down the line.
Okay.
You talk about what do Hindus believe about death and afterlife and incarnation?
Right.
Okay. Incarnation is very central to the Hindu theology. Okay. I am living right now. One thing very certain in my future is that I'm going to die at some time. Every creature that is born, not just humans, every creature that is born must die at some time. It's a known fact. It's in our experience.
Let me just interrupt just real quickly because it's a point of interest for me. There are certain creatures that we know of, certain jellyfish and certain other small sea creatures that are effectively immortal and will never die unless, of course, they're eaten by a predator. That's going to be the subject of another show, but I just wanted to, as a kind of a footnote as we're going, throw that out there.
Okay.
But okay, sorry.
All right. So this is already in our experience. We don't need a rishi to tell us, dude, you're going to die, right? But what we don't know, it is not in our experience, but the rishis perceived it and tell us repeatedly, not once or twice, but repeatedly, that whoever dies will surely be reborn. And that is a universal truth.
Okay.
And this is fundamental to 90% of the Hindu philosophy.
Okay, so there's going to be a rebirth of the person. Now, is it going to be a rebirth where you get the same physical body or a new body?
No. There's actually a very beautiful scene in one of the Hindu epics where two gentlemen are arguing, and one says to the other, you know how many thousands of births you and I have taken? In one birth, I would have been a king, and in the very next birth, I would have been an ant. In one birth, I would have been sort of king of the demigods. That's even higher than human birth. Okay. And in the very next birth, I would have been a dung beetle. So on and so forth. It kind of goes like a huge sinusoidal wave. highs and lows, highs and lows. Absolutely no control on what the next birth is going to be.
Okay, yeah, we're going to get into that in a
Yes.
good bit. I really am excited about that part of
Yes.
it. But let's wind back just a little bit. In terms of the religion itself, are there the main way religions are grouped usually is by what they believe in a god, in a creative force of some sort. What about the Hindus? Where are they on that? Where are you guys?
So, this is the huge question. Anybody who is, slightly curious, who is not Hindu and wants to learn a little bit about Hindu, the first thing that kind of stops them in their tracks, like, are Hindus monotheistic or polytheistic? Because you come to the Bharatiya temple, on the main stage, there are 7 deities holding court. 7 deities holding court. And you go to another Hindu temple, you may see another completely different deity or even more deities. So who are all these deities? Who are all these gods? Right?
Right.
So at the core is again a Vedic teaching, a one-sentence teaching, ekam sat vipraha bahuda vadanti. The truth is one. Unchanging truth is one. Sat means unchanging truth.
Okay.
Ekam sat, the truth is one. But the learned, not ordinary people, not you and I, the learned perceive it and speak of it in many different manifestations.
Okay.
Many different manifestations. So every Hindu knows. They know that that particular stone carving is not the god. Or this may be Ganesha, that may be goddess Parvati, that may be god Shiva. All these different forms are there. But they know at the back is the one God, one supreme power. Typically, in the Upanishads, in the Vedas, this is referred as the Brahman.
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 Okay, right.
Right?
Okay.
But the Brahman manifests itself. It's an itself. It's not a himself or a herself. It doesn't even have a gender.
Okay.
But manifests for various reasons. It manifests in different forms, taking specific shapes. And that offers us as devotees a certain benefit that we can worship it now. What will you do with a nameless, formless, don't know where it is, ether-like Brahman? You can't worship it. Whereas with Ganesha, I perceive Ganesha, I see Ganesha, I can touch Ganesha, I can hug Ganesha if I want.
Okay. Is it similar in the most of the Western world is familiar with and embraces a lot of it embraces Christianity? Is it similar to the idea of the three various kind of forms of God: God the Father, the Son, and then the Holy Ghost, according to the
Not really.
Catholic?
Not really. It's
religion?
actually fundamentally very different.
Okay. All right.
I'll try to be
Trinity.
very brief. I know it is a little bit dense because if we get into this discussion, the entire podcast will be taken up by just
Okay,
this topic. Okay. This is kind of also the universe creation story of Hinduism. Before there was creation, the Brahman was sort of in a dormant state. And at some point, the Brahman, I use these words loosely so that, I use sort of anthropomorphic words to say we understand the concepts. The Brahman wakes up. It's not truly asleep, but wakes up and thinks, I want to have some fun today. So I am going to do creation.
Okay.
So at that point, the Brahman becomes Ishvara, the Lord, the one with the power. Brahman is completely dormant. Ishvara is the one with the power. And from the Ishvara's thought, the creation emerges, the material world emerges.
From the thought?
Yes.
The material? Okay.
Yes. Okay. And then the creation spreads. And this creation is not separate and different from Ishvara. This again connects to some of the pantheistic concepts Dr. Rubinstein was talking about. There are many Puranic stories which talk about this entire universe being within the belly of Mahavishnu. There is this beautiful story of Sri Krishna. Vishnu takes the form of a human boy, and he's living on earth as a little Sri Krishna. He's about 5-year-old, or not even 5, maybe 2 or 3. And he's playing outside, and his brother runs to the mom and says, "Look, Krishna is eating dirt." And the mother gets very angry, comes to Krishna, drags him, and forcefully opens his mouth and looks inside. And suddenly she's surrounded by galaxies and planets and stars, and she sees this entire creation in his alimentary canal.
So it's in that way, it is very pantheistic or panentheistic in some way.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, very fascinating.
So the creation is there. Creation is part of the Lord. But Lord is still separate from it. He is not touched by the woes of the creation. He is not created. He will not be destroyed. He is permanent. He is the Sat. He is the eternal truth. But the creation will come and go.
And what's the name? I missed the name of that.
Brahman.
Brahman is the...
Ishvara.
Ishriya. How do you spell that?
Ishvara.
Okay. Ishvara. Okay. And it's a great point to now look back and say, okay, I'm kind of getting the idea of it, but where is this coming from? I mean, I know the rishis were meditating, and they came up with and it hit them that there's these universal truths. But is that just them having come up with it on their own, or is there some communication from Brahman or some other deity to communicate all of this?
That's a very good question, and I think the jury is still kind of out on that.
Okay.
So the philosophers and the scholars debate, what is the Veda? Is the Veda different from the God? Is the Veda voice of the God? Is the voice of the Brahman, right? Where did the Veda come from? How did the rishis hear it or perceive it, right? It's not revelation in the sense of an Abrahamic text revelations. No, it's not a revelation.
Okay.
There's no deity that came and said, "Dum, dum, dum, this is what it is." No.
Okay.
Right? They sat and they perceived and they spoke.
Okay.
And it's not one or two. There are thousands of them that went through this process. So one recent spiritual master, he gave an analogy. It's like breath to a person. Veda is to God. Veda is the breath of the God.
Okay.
Veda is the breath of the God. So it is there. So he is breathing or she is breathing. It is breathing. And that breath came and touched these rishis, and that became the spoken Veda.
Well, it's absolutely fascinating. I've said this on the show a couple of times, if not maybe more than a couple. That if it's me, if I was way back then, just like, and I think I said this in the context most recently of the Old Testament. If I was way back, back then, I would never have thought. It would just never occur to me that there was any type of a creation event of any kind. I would have just said, well, things have always been here. But these people are sitting there, and somehow they came up with this. And then it's kind of evolved for me into thinking, well, could it be this? Could it be that people in general have built into them, into human beings, built into them kind of a way of just being that leads to, they were born, they were created, so they naturally are kind of coming up with things that are similar in looking at the world at large. So it's a kind of a common story, if you will, that might pervade people instead of being actually the truth. It's something that we see as the truth because that's just the way we're built.
I'll give you a completely 180-degree opposite view of it.
Okay.
It's not just one creation.
Okay.
But one creation after another. Because, as I said, just like any creature, a creation is created, means it's born, it will grow, it will decline, and it will dissolve. Okay? So, kind of talking about God, and when the Brahman becomes Ishvara, and then this whole creation happens, so some duties have to be apportioned and divided and assigned to forces to run this creation along. Otherwise, how does the creation get administered? So essentially, there are three devatas, 3 deities that are given this primary responsibility. Okay, there is a creator called Chaturmukha Brahma. His job is to create. And then there is Vishnu, who is the sustainer. He runs the mechanism. And when it is time for the creation to wind down, there is Shiva, normally referred to him as destroyer, and people imagine like 100 atomic bombs going off. No, nothing like that. It's actually dissolution. It's actually very peaceful. So essentially the creation just dissolves.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, I've heard of that, the destroyer, and it sounds like there's going to be some active event that destroys everything. I kind of liken it sometimes to when I think of it, I liken it to kind of the second law of thermodynamics from science, which is going to dissolve everything.
You're right on.
Okay.
You're right on. And, I mean, people love it, especially people who go into quantum mechanics and stuff. And second law of thermodynamics, the entropy, and how entropy is always increasing.
Right.
That seems to have a kind of a very strong relation to some of these creational concepts from Hinduism. I agree with that.
Yeah, very, very kind of a cool alignment in that regard. We're going to get into that in a little bit more too in just a bit. We're kind of coming up against a break that we're going to be taking in just a minute, but I just want to kind of summarize, see if I've got this. We have the origin of Hinduism traces itself back to a nondescript time. We've got the rishis heavy meditating, but there's thousands of them, not just one. So there's no single person that's the originator, but then they arrive at universal truths, including the structure of the gods, which would be Brahman as your principal one, and then the various Ishvara that brings everything into creation, and then the three.
Then there are the three administrators.
Three administrators, right?
Brahma,
administrators.
Vishnu, Shiva.
Gotcha. All right. Okay, I think I'm getting my arms around this. That's very good. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to take a short break. I'd like to ask the audience to go to our website. I'm going to post up there, and maybe also in the description of the of this on YouTube, I'm going to post in there some links to various things, including and I'm going to butcher the name, the Bharatiya.
Bharatiya.
Bharatiya. Okay, we'll list it. It's the Hindu temple in Troy, Michigan.
People can see beautiful pictures of the various ceremonies and stuff.
Yeah, we're going to do that so you can get even a deeper view of this. And then, and again, we're going to put that all over the place. But in the meantime, we're going to take a short break right now, and then we're going to come back and we're going to get into some more of the specifics. I really want to get into reincarnation and all of that stuff. It's going fast, but we're going to get it covered. We will be right back. All right, welcome back to Access the PodQuest. We're having an exciting conversation with Narayana Swamy Sankagiri, otherwise known as Nasy, all about Hinduism, and we're going to get right back into it. Nasy, you were telling us a lot about the structure, the overall picture of Hinduism. Tell us about the deities of Hinduism.
So there was the Brahman, or there is the Brahman, the unmanifest God, and then there is the Ishvara. When the Brahman thought like, okay, I want to do something and created this creation, and all this creation is happening, and we are all part of this creation. And the rishis tell us the goal of human life is to actively seek liberation, because this unending life, death, born again, dead again, this whole thing is extremely painful, right? So you want to seek liberation. And in the human form, we have the best advantage to do this. And we go to the gurus and say, okay, you gave me a goal, seek liberation, fine. The coach comes to the football team and say, hey, I want you to score, 60 points today, whatever, Well, how do you do it?
Nice goal.
Right?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, nice score. How do I do it? So the rishis gave us not one path, not two paths, multiple paths. Okay? They gave us choices. They know human nature. They know if you say, do this only, humans will rebel. So they gave multiple choices. And one path among that is the path of devotion called bhakti. Bhakti, devotion. Devotion to whom? Devotion to what? To God. To which God? To Ishvara? I don't see this Ishvara anywhere. So again, the rishis sat in meditation and perceived these energy forms that are the manifestations of the divine. So imagine Ishvara as the most subtle form of God. The next, a little bit perceivable, but still very subtle, is the sound form of God. In fact, Judaism kind of caught on to this. The name of the God is so sacred that they don't even want to pronounce it. However, in Hinduism, we love to pronounce the name of the God, not just pronounce it, sing it, chant it, so on and so forth. It is so beautiful. So, again, not just one name. There is Ganesha. Just saying the word Ganesha, that's his name. That is so beautiful. That makes me a connection. That is the sound form of God. It's also known as mantra. Mantra is, again, it kind of made its way into English usage.
Yeah,
Often repeated word is mantra.
Mantra, right, of course. Yeah.
From the word, from the sound form of God, God comes down a little bit more solid and becomes a geometric design, a two-dimensional geometric design. This is called a yantra. You might have heard and seen designs, symmetric designs called the mandalas. Mandalas are a variation, non-religious variation of yantra. Yantras have very specific design, yeah?
Okay.
From there, the God becomes even more solid and becomes a three-dimensional figure, like a statue. That is called a murti or vigraha. This is what we install in the temples or sometimes at home in a miniature scale, and we do the worship too. And the fourth is the actual act of worship called the tantra. Mantra, yantra, murti, tantra. The act of worship itself is divine. So when I'm conducting the physical form of worship to the deity, I am in connection with the deity through that process, okay? And since we talked about these physical forms of deities, I would like to share with you some of these manifestations.
Sure.
Here is Ganesha.
Ganesha, okay.
If you have a Hindu friend, I'll bet you 99% possibility on the dash of their vehicle, they have a tiny Ganesha statue sitting there.
All right. Very colorful. Okay.
This is Vishnu. He is typically shown with a bluish body, having 4 arms, holding different kinds of weapons. He's kind of the sustainer. He's kind of the law and order deity of this universe. And because of that role, he actually incarnates from time to time to restore balance in the universe. So these human incarnations of Vishnu also are worshipped as gods. I'll show them a little bit. This is Bhagavan Shiva. We refer to him as the dissolver or the destroyer of the universe, but he also represents a lot of other things. Their physical forms are highly symbolic. Every single element, the matted hair, the snake as a necklace, the weapon he's holding, all these have some very specific, very deep spiritual meanings. And here is the beauty, the goddess Durga. Hinduism is probably the only ancient religion that is still surviving today and actively practiced today that has seen divine in the feminine form. The divine feminine worship is very widespread across Hinduism, and particularly in the form of goddess Durga. As you can tell, she's probably even more powerful than Vishnu. Vishnu only has 4 arms. She probably has like 10 arms and holding different weapons in each of these in her hands. And she's riding a tiger.
Riding a tiger in multiple arms.
Yeah.
Okay, got
so
it.
She is
pretty dangerous.
Powerful. She's pretty. You don't want to mess with her. And I mentioned Vishnu incarnates from time to time to take care of some business in this physical world. There were at least 2 documented such incarnations. That is Sri Rama. You might have heard in the news that Hindus built a really beautiful, rather rebuilt a historical temple in the birthplace of Rama called Ayodhya. That was inaugurated a couple of years ago amidst a lot of fanfare. This is Sri Rama, his wife, and his brother. And then this is Sri Krishna. Vishnu, in the form of Sri Krishna, taught us the Bhagavad Gita. If I have to give you sort of a Bible equivalent of a Hindu holy book, I would say Bhagavad Gita. But that's not the origin of Hinduism. What Krishna taught in the Bhagavad Gita, he took the essential teaching of all the Upanishads that came before him and kind of poured it into. That is sort of the Cliff's Notes version of the Vedas.
I'm glad you're mentioning this because it was one of the questions I was thinking about, which is you mentioned all the books, but not the Bhagavad Gita, and that seems to be a central item.
So, and it is one of the most translated Hindu religious teaching into English. Like even now, there are multiple translations. I'll pass over these. I mentioned rishis, and there is a bridge between the very ancient rishis and the modern times, and that bridge is this great sage called the Vedavyasa. Almost single-handedly, he captured all this knowledge and kind of put it into a form that is accessible to these later human beings. And from that time all the way down to the current day, there have been a series of teachers. Here is Adi Shankara, typically placed in about 9th century Common Era. He played a very significant role in continuing the ancient teachings all the way down to the modern day. Here is a more recent, historically known, modern-day quote-unquote saint called Ramakrishna. I mean, I hate to use the word saint because that has many other connotations. I would say he's a spiritual master.
Okay.
And he trained and taught many disciples that had a significant effect on the rest of the world later on. That is Ramakrishna. Another modern-day sage called Ramana Maharshi. Interestingly, people from far-flung areas all over the world were somehow receiving telepathic messages. They didn't know anything about India. They didn't know anything about Hinduism, and suddenly felt this urge, and they traveled thousands of miles. This is before, intercontinental air travel and stuff, somehow made their way to his feet and spend the rest of their lives being with him.
Okay.
That is Ramana Maharshi. And this is another modern-day sage called Chandrasekharendra Saraswati. He's actually a religious figurehead. He was the head of a particular religious teaching organization. He lived about 100 years. He passed away around 1985, 1990 time frame. He lived for 100 years. He had a tremendous impact on India and the modern-day Hindu psyche in staying with the tradition, reviving the tradition, that sort of thing. And here is Swami Vivekananda.
That name sounds familiar.
He is very important to American Hindus because he's the first prominent Hindu to travel from India to America. He spoke famously at the 1893 Parliament of Religions in Chicago and addressed the gathering starting with the words, "My beloved brothers and sisters of America," and then spoke for some time. And that speech is now immortalized in that particular building. You can visit there now.
That's kind of cool.
And there is a Vivekananda monastery in a small town called Ganges in Michigan, on the western side of Michigan.
Oh, wow.
Vivekananda had a profound impact on people who were interested in philosophy, Vedanta. He taught Vedanta to many American students, established monasteries at various places in the U.S. So that's kind of a brief introduction.
Well, it's a great collection of items, and we're going to have that shown on screen as the video gets posted. And so let me kind of wind back now. The gods that you showed and we discussed, those are kind of manifestations, physical, physical, energy manifestations.
Physical manifestations.
Physical,
yes, absolutely.
Of the one God of Brahman in Israel, right? I mean, that's pretty much a summary, right? I mean,
yes.
And the idea behind a lot of this, you mentioned the idea is to worship these gods
Yes.
and Brahman in order to break away and break the cycle of
Correct.
of
You break the
incarnation,
shackles.
reincarnation,
Yes.
etc., so that and so you can alleviate suffering.
Yes.
I've got a fundamental question about
Yes.
that, and I've heard that, of course, in Hinduism, but also Buddhism, obviously, about the cycle of suffering. Where do they get why do the rishis and anyone in the who are studying all this, where do they get the idea, or why do they get the idea, I should say, that existing and then getting reborn or whatever is suffering? Why is that a
Because
painful
that's the
thing?
truth. Because that's the truth.
But like
you
painful,
talk
you said,
you talk to medical professionals right now. Latest medical learnings are establishing that the process of birth is traumatic to the child.
Yeah, but
And
then,
even the
right.
process of spending 9 months in the mother's womb is traumatic to the child. It's
Yeah.
just that when the child actually comes out into the world, somehow that is forgotten. But doesn't eliminate the fact that it was very painful.
Well, yeah, you do have, okay. If that's the case, I'm just kind of a quick pushback here. If that's the case, you've got the birthing process, or the going through that. That's a painful thing. But after that, it seems like after that, you got the time when you're born, all the way until the time, let's say, I don't know, you're either older or you've run into some kind of horrible medical problem. Everything's really good. No, you're saying no.
No.
I think
It's
good.
just because you have been conditioned to accept
Okay.
that,
All right.
right? We are both sort of similar in age, and we have seen a bit of life.
Yes.
If you sit really calmly, and if you really
Not easy for me.
accept, if you really accept honestly stuff that had happened in our lives, there are probably very few individuals that can actually say, I have had a fully 100% happy life.
Well, there are. I do take stock of the vast numbers of people who live in the world and who have lived in the world in bad economic conditions and bad, physical conditions, etc.
Apart from that,
but you get that's just, and that, however, is a matter of economics and how we approach
you
things.
could be a millionaire.
Yeah, but
Not having to.
Yeah, let's say you're a millionaire, or let's say you're just a regular person like myself.
Yeah.
I look back and say, yeah, I've had an up, things have been up and down. By and large, things have been great. I've had some physical problems, of course, and some other things, but things have been really good. I wouldn't, if someone came to me and said,
I would humbly submit it to you.
Yeah.
If you keep thinking, if you wake up every morning and think to yourself, my life sucks.
Yeah.
You won't be able to function.
well, of course not. Yeah, I wouldn't,
Right?
right.
So this introduces another beautiful Hindu philosophical concept called the Maya.
Right? Illusion.
The Maya, the
right?
illusion.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the Hindu teachers and poets they have such beautiful metaphors, man. One way they put it is, he is the master director, and we are all players on stage.
Okay.
And we don't speak our own lines. We speak the lines he given us. We act the way he directs us. You follow what I'm saying?
Sure. I'm following
Yeah.
it, yes.
You are watching Macbeth. You are watching, some other, whatever. And this guy goes through elation. This guy goes through depths of depression. All the highs and lows. Life goes on.
Yeah, it does. But okay, is it fair to say, or is this unfair? Let me ask you this.
Sure.
Just kind of thinking about this now. The these famous T-shirts that say "Life is good." All right? Would it be fair to say that Hindus and maybe even Buddhists, whoever, and would say would add in the word "not"? So it would be "Life is not good."
No,
That's not
I
fair?
wouldn't say that. I mean, in general, life is good. I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't take away the fact that it is also painful.
Well, yeah, eventually it's going to be painful.
Both,
one
both
way or
are
the
true
other.
at the same time.
Or it might
Both are
not be
true at the
painful
same
if,
time.
let's say, you are driving down the road and your car explodes. You're not even going to know it.
Right.
But for the most part, yeah. As you get older and you start dying, but it's that piece in the, it's a.
Let's come back to the fundamentals.
Okay.
Let's come back to the fundamentals. The liberation is from the endless cycle of life and death.
Right.
Okay? Here you are born as Brian Marcus. You're living here in the suburban Detroit. Everything is comfortable for you.
Yeah.
Next life, you're going to be a dung beetle.
That's not going to be a good one. Yeah. I'll pass. I'll pass on that. I'll go straight to another human being or whatever. Well, let's ask the question. Yeah.
So
Okay,
the point is, life in actually a dung beetle may be a very happy creature. We don't know.
Maybe a black cat or something, but okay.
But coming back to the fundamentals, it's not so much about what is happening in the time you are living in a particular form and whether it was happy for you or not. The point is the endless cycle of birth and death is painful with no end in sight. It's like I put you on I-80 and you have the hopes of reaching San Francisco. But what if suddenly by magic there is no San Francisco and you keep on driving and I-80 never ends? That's painful.
Right. Okay. I hear you.
It's kind of like Sisyphus pushing the stone.
Well, it would seem to me that then, if that's the case, that it would seem to me that the goal then would be the endless cycle of not the living, but the dying.
Yes.
So you would get, and maybe I'm leading to it, so that you would eventually have an end. The cycle would end with you living forever, rather than not living at all. So the cycle's broken, but you live forever.
You will still, because the mortal body has been created.
Right.
The mortal body has to end somewhere.
Okay.
That is the natural law.
Okay,
That's the natural law.
Okay.
Right? That's part of dharma. Whatever born must die. Right? So natural body will die. For example, particularly devotees who are attached to some of those teachers I showed you, like Ramakrishna.
Yeah.
Ramakrishna left his body at the age of around 50, 60 or so, right? But many people believe that his energy is still alive and around them, guiding them, so on and so forth. Same thing with the sage I showed you, Chandrasekharendra Saraswati, the monk who lived to be 100. Still, he left the body, and many people believe his energy is with us, guiding us, so on and so forth.
Well, if he did die, then according to the Hindu tradition and religion, he would then get reborn?
He's an example of a liberated soul.
Oh, okay. So he would be liberated, and his soul. Okay. So at the end of it, when you do get liberated, then your energy.
There's no rebirth.
There's no rebirth. Your energy just keeps like going somewhere else, and
there
that's
are
it?
two ways to look at it.
Okay.
There's two ways to look at it. But whatever energy that came from the Bhagavan, that came from the Ishvara, went back into Ishvara. That's one way to look at it. Second way to look at it is, even though the main energy went back to Ishvara, there is a certain aura that is left on earth where that person walked.
Okay.
Right? So it's kind of like you keep staring at a light, you switch the light off, you kind of still see that light when you close your eyes.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's kind of like that aura still lives on for some time and kind of continues to infuse us with that positive energy, with that guiding light, sort of.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. It's just for me, I'm looking at it and thinking, if I have a choice, okay, if I were given a choice, and it doesn't sound like under the Hindu religion, you don't really have a choice.
Actually, you do have a choice.
Oh, okay.
You do have a choice.
Okay.
Every day you make a conscious choice of like, am I walking towards liberation or am I walking away from liberation?
All right. So then you have a choice. It would seem to me that your choice is: do you want an endless cycle of birth and death, or get liberated and no longer exist?
Exactly.
Okay. So depending on the level of pain that we're talking about and whether the existence is as a human or as a dung beetle or whatever, I probably would choose the former. I'd probably choose the endless cycle of life and death rather than not existing.
That's what
at all.
is Maya.
Okay.
That's what is Maya.
And so what I'm living under an illusion.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Okay.
Absolutely.
So that's
why the rishis are there. That's why the teachers are there. I don't know. I mean, by the time you went to school, corporeal punishment was taken out of schools. But I went to elementary school in India, and we got some nice beatings, man. You know, that's why teachers are there to knock some sense into us.
Beat it into you. Okay.
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
Yeah. All right. I might not want to talk to too many rishis because I don't want to be beaten to death. Right.
Actually, Krishna is the supreme teacher.
Okay.
The one who gave the Bhagavad Gita, he gives the Bhagavad Gita to his favorite cousin, like a brother and disciple, Arjuna, on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Arjuna, the great warrior, military general, everybody is relying on him to win this battle, and suddenly he throws his weapons down and says, I'm not going to fight. Okay. And Arjuna speaks for 20 verses or 40 verses to Krishna, explaining why his decision is a wise decision and he doesn't want to fight this battle. Krishna listens. 40 verses he listens. And the first word he speaks is, don't talk like an idiot. That's literally the first word he says.
Don't talk like an idiot.
Just slaps him verbally. Slaps him verbally.
You're
That's what a teacher
getting out of
is
line, you
supposed to
slap
do.
them into shape,
Yeah,
right? Okay.
exactly.
Well, okay. And I want to wind back again. The really big point that you said is that one of the absolute universal truths is everything that's created dies, right? But and I don't know how much time we have left yet, but this is going to get into as a really cool topic. And the producer of the show is saying 8 minutes, which is probably not long, not even nearly long enough. We're just scratching the surface. They're going to be part one of this conversation because this is thrilling and I just love it. What about, stay with me. What about AI? We've got a situation where we are hurtling towards what they call the singularity. It's almost certainly going to happen where human beings merge with or otherwise, fade away in favor of AI versions of life of some sort. But let's assume the former. Let's assume that it's human beings merge with AI. We are effectively then, our bodies become somewhat robotic or something along those lines. But the fusion happens and there is no death because of that. Let's assume that that's the case. Biological death is now no longer an issue because robotic bodies, AI and human, all fuse together. What happens to Hinduism?
Nothing will happen to Hinduism.
Okay.
It is Sanatana Dharma. It is eternal. Let me put it this way. Just because AI happens, do the fundamental laws of physics change?
Yeah,
Does gravity disappear?
No.
Right? So we have this AI robot, just by wish, can it fly to Mars or Venus or whatever?
Not as currently conceived. No.
You cannot defy the gravity, right? So in the Hindu concept of what drives this whole creation, there are two parallel energies or parallel concepts. Ritam, Satyam. Ritam is unmanifest truth. Satyam is manifest truth. Okay? Both cannot be overcome by what has already been created because this is a byproduct. The byproduct cannot go back and try to change what is the source. Okay? Ritam is always there and will hold true all the time. Satyam is always there and will hold true all the time. I'll give you a specific example.
Okay.
Satyam as a manifest truth, for example, for us living on earth, the sun always rises on the east. And that is because now, with modern science, we know because the earth spins in a certain way. And that again because of gravity. We know all this, right?
Yep.
That is Satyam. That is a manifest truth. If tomorrow, by some force, if this changes, the world as we know will disappear.
Right, that's the end of the earth.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So AI may happen, AI's grandfather may happen, the fundamentals don't change.
Okay. But the cycle of birth and rebirth does stop if there is no actual death, right?
But other creatures are dying.
Right, other creatures are dying, but not humans, let's
Yeah.
say. Okay?
Yeah.
So human beings would
Let
continue.
me put it this way. So part of the manifest truth is that the world also will end at some time. Let us say I accept your argument. Some body is created, some intelligence is created, the body and intelligence are coexisting. And even with non-organic matter, even that will disintegrate at some time. Steel disintegrates. Titanium even will disintegrate at some time. So we haven't invented a material yet that will stay forever, right? So even those materials have the potential to disintegrate. So that body, that intelligence as we know it, will disintegrate at some point. It may live beyond 100 years that we normally associate with a human life now. Okay,
Sure.
That's point number one.
Okay.
Point number two, even if you say it is living for thousands of years, Hindu rishis have conceived the time as cyclical, consisting of multiple cycles, shortest being a day and night, We are familiar with the seasons. We are familiar with the annual cycle, so on and so forth. Now we are familiar with, on a more global scale, things like El Nino that happen on a 10-year or a 12-year scale, so on and so forth. Hindu rishis have, I don't know, imagined or perceived millions of years of cycles.
And then that'll be the end
At
of
that
everything.
point, creation will cease to exist.
Yeah, and that's again another outstanding point. Both 2 points. And again, addressing those. The people who are in the AI singularity area, and we are running up against a clock. I'll kind of have to finish this. In the AI singularity kind of fusion area, I've thought about that. Of course, is that the materials will wear down. The sun is going to explode. So biological death is not. It's the aging and that process gets extended, but not necessarily forever. So the idea there is, for them at least, is to think of transmitting, to upload the actual consciousness of people from the biological body, a human body or a fused body with AI, up into a non-material cloud-like experience that simulates reality so that they don't have to worry about that. And then also, if we take the second point, which is that at some point there's going to be a cyclical end. Well, that's why there are people who are addressing this. It's why people like Frank Tipler, who we've recently had on the show, and others, and perhaps Tara Chardin's version of the Omega Point, et cetera. That's why those things are saying, look, as life fills the universe, it's going to figure out a way to stop, not necessarily the cyclical portion, which is a great point, but also the second law of thermodynamics and whatnot, to be able to stop that from happening. But again, I'm afraid it's going to take us way off point, and I don't want to do that. This has been just absolutely outstanding. We're just, like I said, we're just scratching the surface here. I could be talking to you for the next 6 hours and still not get it all. You're a fantastic source of information on Hindus. I'd love to thank you for being on the show with us today. We'd love to have your thoughts on this. Go to accessthepodquest.com. We're going to, of course, have the video posted there, but I'd love to have your comments. Let me know all of the things you think about this, especially focusing on the big parts, the deities of Hinduism, the principles, the universal truths, the texts, if you have any information about that you'd like to share, comments you'd like, all of that would be fantastic. And as always, go to YouTube, come back here, give us your comments, always click like, even if you don't, and then subscribe. Make sure to do that. Even if you've already subscribed, do it again. And then also get your 10 in. Knock it out early in the month, get 10 subscribers. Everybody do that. We'll build our base up quite a bit. Finally, just again, one more time, I'd like to thank you, Nasy, for being on the show. You were a fantastic source of information all about Hinduism. Absolutely loved it.
You're very welcome, Brian. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you again. All right. You guys, everyone, do the normal. Go to YouTube, go to accessthepodquest.com, do all the stuff you do. You guys go there. We'll be going ever forward.